Hi, everyone. I'm Sean, and this is episode 4 of the Love to Own Your Business podcast. Here we learn how to grow businesses that we love to own. Each month, we share great advice on how to do that, and also on how to avoid the pitfalls that make us not love our business so much. I think we can all agree that in order to love our businesses, we need to love our customers. And to get more customers that we love, we need to communicate directly to them. Our guest today can help. This month, we're talking with Erik Eustice from Of the Sea. And among many other things, Erik is an extraordinary brand sleuth and communicator. So hi, Erik.
Hey, Sean.
How you doing?
I am excellent. Thank you.
You know, we really should have done this over whiskey, right?
You know, it's not too late. And also, it's not too early. What is it, like 11, 10 in the morning?
Lunchtime somewhere, right?
Yeah,
But-
right. That could work.
Why don't we talk about that for a minute? Because I didn't really mention that in the intro, but that's a very interesting part of your life.
Yeah, I'm a certified whiskey sommelier through the Whiskey Marketing School out of Austin, Texas. I'm a level 3. I've been at this for about 4 years now. And about a year and a half ago, I created Whiskey Folks, which is a whiskey experience brand. I host private whiskey experiences that are part whiskey history, part craft, part story. And we basically just use whiskey to bring people together. So so it's a little bit of a side hustle for me that helps me to expand my network and do something that I love. It doesn't feel like work at all. So my real gig though is the brand story stuff, the persuasive communication through the advertising agency Of the Sea.
Tell us a little bit about Of the Sea, and then I want to give a quick background as to why I wanted to talk to you so much today.
Yeah. So Of the Sea is, I guess, a boutique style advertising agency in Buffalo, New York. We will be 10 years old on Valentine's Day, actually, next year. Love is definitely a theme of ours. Loving who you are, why you are that way, and the people that you do your work with. Certainly customers are a big piece of that. We say that we build brands and ads that demand attention and create conversation. So it is really about getting people to pay attention, but to do that in a very true and meaningful way, so that you're building long-term bonds between your brand and your brand of customers.
As a quick background, I recently went through the process of what I thought was just going to be a website refresh, right? But with your help, it became much more than that. It was transformational for both my brand, my services, as well as me personally, right? So it was so fantastic that I felt really compelled to share this with everyone. So let's talk about this and why you think this was so powerful.
First, I would like to ask the same question of you. What did you think was so powerful and transformation about your experience?
I think for me, it was the process of discovering the journey between what's life like for my customers before they start working with Sean, and what's life like for my customers after working with Sean, and figuring out what that journey is from here to there, and what it is that I do to get them from here to there. Was I had to really examine everything from who I was as a service provider, what my service really, really is, and what it is that I really do for them, right? How do I make them feel from, the point from before they work with me until afterwards? Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think transformation is the key. And we talk a lot about identity and how people relate to themselves, and then how they will relate to your brand as a result. And you can think of it as Donald Miller points out in his story brand stuff. You can kind of think of it as you use the term journey, that hero's journey, that archetypal story of a character on their way to becoming, right? But there's challenges in the way, and they need to overcome those challenges to become their real, true, actualized self, right? And that's how the movie's over, is because they make that transformation, right? And you get that feeling of like, yes, right? It's completion, right? And so the idea is that all of us, all people, want that and are actually seeking that out. And so the theory is that we are all on our own kind of hero's journey, but we don't necessarily know all the time how to get where we're going, even if indeed we know where we're going. So the whole point of the story, the whole point of the journey is transformation. So understanding who the customer is before you, what it is that they aspire to be, what is it that's inside them that's calling them to become, right? And then they're not going to be able to do that on their own. They're going to need a guide, and that's obviously it's another character, in the hero's journey is a guide comes along and is able to connect with that hero and is able to then show that hero how to become the person that they really seek to be. And that again, I think all goes back to identity, and that I think and not to get too psychobabbly here, but it goes back to the idea of the self and our own self-image and persona and personality, big words that are used in advertising, right? And we often think of as positive things, but can also be seen as obstacles or stumbling blocks, right? And so it's this identification of the self, the true self that is inside of you that you really long to be, but either are afraid to become or don't know how to become. And so really successful brands are able to identify who is their customer, right? And what are these desires and longings and these kind of buried and hidden, not conscious things. We're not walking around thinking about all this stuff, right? But it is driving our decision making, our attitudes, and then our behavior, right? So it's understanding this idea of this self that you could be and saying, hey, we can help you become this. We can guide you to becoming the individual that deep down you truly know you can be and long to be. And the brands that do that, that position themselves in that way, tell that story and then help their customer become that, they're the ones that win the most.
So what do you think is one of the major barriers that when you're working with people sort of prevents them from having that image of themselves, that image of being the guide?
I think part of it is expectations, what they think other people think they should be. All right. So I'm going to kind of split your question there a little bit. I think that you think you need to present yourself in a certain way as a business in your advertising. Some of this is based on conventional wisdom, which we know is more conventional than wisdom sometimes. It could be based on you seeing how other businesses or brands project themselves, and you think, oh, that must be how it's done. The problem being the way that they're approaching it could be self-centered, looking at the brand as the hero versus the customer as the hero. The brand really should be the guide. But if you're not seeing, if this has not been mirrored for you, if you've not seen others do this, right, then why would you then know to do it for yourself? And certainly you're not an expert in the field. You're an expert in the field of what you do in your business, right? So I think there's lots of things, but these are some of the core reasons I think. I think fear is another one. Being willing to get introspective, to really take the time to go through a process, and then to be willing to be honest in that process, to perhaps learn things about yourself that you didn't recognize before, things that really could lead to fundamental changes, not just in how you advertise and tell your story, but literally how you exist as a brand and how you move forward from there. And while that sounds exciting, that transformation, we all have it. Like, think of it personally, right? Like, there are things that you'd be better if you did this thing, or if you were less of this piece of your personality or your whatever that you've acquired over the years. And we know that, yet we don't do anything because here it feels risky or like the unknown, like we're stepping out, and we also feel like we're on our own. We have no guide to do that. Right. So like we might be reluctant to do it. So there's lots of reasons that prevent, I think, people from really I'm leaning in to an approach like this.
That's a very good point. So if I'm gonna sort of recall something personally about that, also it's I used to have a persona of what I thought a professional is, how a professional acts, what the demeanor is, more very serious and stout and and not funny, very little humor in their life. And it took me a long time, I think, over the course of my journey as a professional to really learn to loosen up, use humor, which is actually a phenomenal tool if you're leading people, right? So I agree with that immensely. That it's really a relearning of how we view our images of ourselves in relation to other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so another reason that we're here is really to help our listeners grow their businesses gracefully. So, can you talk to us about um, an experience or a pitfall that you think you could have avoided if you had that timely piece of advice ahead of time?
Yeah. It's not, I wouldn't say a particular pitfall, but I can say a category of things that have happened that all relate around the idea of have you ever read the book, The Obstacle is the Way?
Mm-mm.
Ryan Holiday, I believe,
Nope.
is his last name.
Nope.
Kind of modern day voice of Stoic philosophy. And that was a pretty transformational moment for me, because I always related to obstacles, to challenges, to problems as a problem, as a thing that is in my way. And I have to get this thing out of my way. And that could be an idea, that could be a person, that could be whatever, right? A circumstance. And what the obstacle is the way helped me realize, and other works and related ideas, is that the thing that is before you is not to be necessarily um, beaten or resisted, but it is to be embraced and to say, okay, the way forward actually is the obstacle. The obstacle becomes part of
The journey.
the plan, right? Rather than you saying, we have a plan and now this is happening and no, I'm not going to allow it. So I think that for me, it's been resisting what is, like, just literally what is the reality of the situation, and me not wanting to face that. So that could show up as an individual in a position that perhaps they're not really cut out for,
Hmm.
but perhaps it's a position that maybe I don't think I'm cut out for. And maybe I don't fully appreciate or understand what it takes to have success inside of that. So what do? I'm optimistic. I am a very trusting person. I have kind of faith in humanity, though there are things that sometimes make us question that, right? But I have this general faith in people. So I say, okay, this is for you. Go ahead and do that. And that works out really well sometimes, but there are instances where it doesn't work out well. And so it has been like my resisting of whether or not I put someone in the right position for success. It could be me resisting the fact that I'm not comfortable with some of these things, right? Like you and I have talked about this around, let's say, like the numbers side of the business. I mean, I'm a writer. I come up with ideas, and I'm not a slouch necessarily with like math, but like the whole like numbers of the business thing. Um, it makes me uncomfortable because it's not my strong suit, right? And who doesn't love being in the zone where they know that they're in complete control? So I think you resist, or I have resisted because I'm not comfortable with it. So I don't ask certain questions. I don't dig.
Mm.
I kind of like abdicate or defer my ultimate responsibility and accountability as the owner of this business, right? And so I don't actually place fault on another individual for that. I say to myself, okay, hey, like, well, I created this situation and I did or did not do this or that, and that's why we're at where we're at. And I can say that I've had some very costly mistakes
Mm.
as a result of not being willing to see what actually is, then being overly optimistic or just flat out resisting what is, and then not asking the questions and not, as a result, not digging. And then, yeah, getting, kicked in the teeth, either financially or relationally, which always leads to some sort of financial impact for your business, whether that be internally or with clients, whatever. Yeah.
I think it's actually very common in growing businesses, right? I mean, what you're talking about is really just the art of delegation and what's the right amount of delegation. How much do I really need to spend of my own time to learn how to do it? If it's something that's not your natural tendency, you try to offload those things as much as possible, and then find the right person that the personality matches that, and then
Yeah.
give them the right responsibilities and the authority and the boundaries to work within, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's difficult for us as entrepreneurs.
You still have to, you still have to, the thing is, it's part about trust, right? I think.
Yes.
But I think it's like, so for me, it was trust. And
Mm,
then there was a period after it. And then there's this idea about trust but verify, right? And it's like,
yes.
oh, that's a better way.
Yeah.
Trust but verify. It's
Yeah.
the verify part, though, is where the discomfort comes in if you don't feel
Yes.
like you're equipped as a leader, right? And
Yes.
that's the thing that you shy away from. So I
Yeah.
think you're right. It is all that structure
Yeah.
stuff and delegation with a certain, I think, posture related to that.
That's a good point. I think that's also it's who's going to be the person, going back to the issue of a guide, right? Who can be that right person that uses the right language? We talk about this in consultants. I think we talked about this like months and months ago, but we talked about having the right kind of consultant for the right person. There's lots of great consultants out there. They use different language. This person might resonate better with you, just like this brand might resonate better with you, right?
Mhm.
And I think that it's an iterative process to find who's the person that can sort of find the right buttons to push that open up the doors for understanding just enough so that I can verify, right? You don't have to become an accountant to be able to look at your books, right? You just have to know what passes the sniff test, right? Is what we call, right? So it's like, does this make sense to me or does this not make sense to me? And if not, can this person that I've delegated to at least explain to me why, right? Whatever it's numbers or whatever the case might
So
be.
you know what questions do I need to be
Yes.
asking? Where do I need to be investigating? So if I'm going to verify, you have a context of understanding for that. Sure.
Perfect. That's really, really good. So, on the flip side of that, what is a great piece of advice that you received as you were growing your business that you think still resonates today, that you'd like to pass along?
Sure. I mean, of course, like, I mean, on one hand, I mean, the stuff that we're talking about, this is all like cliche in a way, right? Like,
Mm,
I'm not here to give some piece of information that like no one has ever said or thought of before, right? So let's be clear about that.
yep,
And as kind of like a guy who has a personality that leans towards being an individual, right? And being unique and being in a business
mm,
where it's all about like, people judge you based on the uniqueness of your ideas often,
yep,
which is not always the best judge of an idea, by the way. Um, it is a little hard to give like kind of cliche responses, but I would say it's trust your gut, it's trust your body, right? And we've all heard that one before, right? And I
mm,
extend it to body because when you think of like trust your gut, you think, oh, it's intuition, and it is part intuition. It makes it seem like it's like an intellectual kind of thing, like a right brain intuitive kind of thing. And yes, but I also think it's like, well, literally, how do you feel, right? Like in a moment where you have to think about you're deciding on something, you're pondering a decision or a tough choice. Um, how do you physically feel, right? Like, is your body tense? Are your hand, like, are you going into fight mode here
mm,
as you consider this, And so I think it's, I have known this, but have not always listened to my body,
yeah,
to what it's telling me, right? And I've found that there have been moments where something went off the rails and I'm like, I knew something, I felt something wasn't right with that. I ignored it, or I was hopeful that it would sort itself out. And it doesn't. It never does, right? So I know it's kind of pedestrian, but like pay attention to what your body is telling you because it could save you a lot of headache and heartache.
yeah. Yeah, your gut is an important thing, right? And I think because so much of our life occurs really behind what we're consciously thinking of, right? So when our body, I think in a business situation, a personal situation, or anything that we're occurring in life, we're we're sort of processing things in the background that we're not really conscious of. And because we've had so many experiences over our life, our subconscious or whatever you want to call it, right? This
Mhm.
uh, unconscious part of what we're talking about is sending us signals through our body. So I agree with 100% that trusting your gut it's such an important piece of advice, that if it doesn't feel right, something probably is off, right?
Mhm.
But we get like attracted to these shiny objects, right? And sometimes we're like, it's shinier than my gut feeling, so maybe we'll go for it. Maybe we'll work out. But
Yeah, or it's just your gut tells you something's not right, and you're like, I don't want it to be not right. I want it to be fine. I don't want to have to deal with this right now. So you
yeah,
might rationalize it away when you shouldn't. Yeah.
yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. Um, so we've sort of kind of flown through this actually, but if I want to leave our listeners with um like a piece of advice or something that, as they look at sort of bringing things full circle again, um as they look at about how do I is my messaging effective, is it really coming across how I think it is, and am I really reaching the right people? What is some advice that you can give them to begin chewing at the corners, looking at the sides of it, and saying, work my way in towards whether I need a refresh or a change?
Okay. There's a lot of ways you can kind of approach that as kind of like a test, right? Uh, to your comment of reaching the right people, I would say that is not the place to start. Don't think about the quote right people. All right.
Mm,
I think the idea of target marketing through there's a like there's some medium or channel or combination. It, it is always about who you are and how you are projecting that. The way that you target is through the message. All right. So you could simplify it. It's an oversimplification, but let's pretend that we live in a world where there's values in worldview and that people tend to gravitate towards other people, ideas, organizations that share their values and their worldview. All right. So if you look at it that way, then you could really say there's two groups of people. There's the group of people that are going to share your values and your worldview, and they're likely to agree with you and want to have a connection to you, right? And then there's everybody else. We don't know where these people are necessarily. They're not wearing shirts that are identifying themselves, though I guess in some instances they are, not to get political, but like that's probably a good example of that kind of that self-identification, like lawn signs, right? But for
right.
the most part, you don't have people with lawn signs that are saying things like, what's really important to me is family and getting the job done right. Like I haven't seen that lawn sign. I haven't seen someone wearing that shirt, right? But
Yeah.
these are the kind of the underpinning values that will inspire a worldview. And so really great brands, effective brands they understand their values, they have a strong worldview, and they're willing to share that. So I would
Yeah.
say, look at how you are communicating, more so what are you communicating? And I would say, does it tell me what's important to you? Does it suggest a strong worldview? Could somebody disagree with it? That's a big one.
Mm,
Most advertising fails or is mediocre in its effectiveness because it's not strong enough to get someone to hate you. Strong word, right? But they say the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Elie Wiesel, I think, said that. All
mm,
right. And I think that's a powerful idea. We're so sometimes concerned about offending people, especially in business context, right?
mm,
That we don't put ourselves out there in a profound way. So if you want people to love you, you need to be sending a message that's strong enough to get people to love you. But the message that's strong enough to get people to love you is strong enough to get another group to say, I don't agree with the way you think the world works.
mhm.
That makes for very effective advertising and messaging. So I would ask, are we being bold? Are we saying something that is really true to who we are? And I would say, are we talking more about our products and our services?
Mm,
Are we talking more about the things that are going to resonate on a deep level with the type of customers that share our values in our worldview.
Yep. That was I think one of the most powerful things that as we were going through our process is you asked me to take a stand on something, right? And now I link that with something that I think I read yesterday. It was the book Tribes. I don't know, I forgot who wrote it, but it was talking about the world of social media and how that world has really opened up the ability for people to find their own tribe, right? So connecting what you're saying to taking a stand will naturally lead you towards finding the tribe that makes sense for you and your business, right? If I'm
Yeah,
sort of
absolutely. And think
surmising
about
that,
it,
right?
right? Yeah, absolutely. I don't know who wrote that book. I know Seth Godin has talked a lot about the idea of tribes over
Mhm.
the years. Um, it Think about it. Like if there's a group of people that are singing the song that is in your head and your heart, right? Like
Mhm.
how would you react to that, right? Of course, you're going to have a visceral reaction to that because you're going to identify, yeah, that's true to me. All
Hmm.
right. We want truth. We want connection.
Yeah.
So, and that's I think the other piece of it is that the idea behind advertising at its deepest level is forming bonds and connections with people. All right.
Yes.
Deep bonds that are emotional and that have staying power.
Mhm.
You do that by being real.
Authentic. Yeah.
You do that by saying things and doing things that when people hear them or see them, they're not going to exclaim this out loud, but in here they go, that's true. That's honest, right? And that's what it's about, building bonds, right? You
Mhm.
form those bonds, people will like you more. They will feel connected to you. They don't even know who you are. They have never met you, but they will feel like they know you and that you guys are part of the same tribe. And when that happens, it's just a matter of time for them to get to the point where now they need what you're selling or
Mhm.
what you're offering. You are now on a very short list of options for them, or you are the only option. They have already decided in advance. And we get these comments from our clients all the time. They say, hey, I was at the grocery store and someone said, hey, aren't you so and so? And they said, I don't need this right now, but I swear as soon as I do, you're the people that we're going to be hiring. And we get that feedback regularly.
Mhm.
So I know that this stuff works. It just takes a commitment
Yeah.
and patience
Mhm.
to allow it to do this, because just like in any great relationship, it doesn't happen like that,
Yeah.
right? Our best relationships, our strongest relationships take time, and there are key moments and milestones. And so as a brand, we need to remember that, and
Mhm.
we need to work a strategy that has patience and also is considerate of these key milestones in building these relationships.
That is fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Again, this
Um,
is all stuff I picked up. Like this is Donald Miller. This is Seth Godin.
yeah.
This is Roy H. Williams, the Wizard of Ads.
Yes.
This is Stephen Pressfield,
Mm.
an author that you might not think you'd get good marketing advice from, but he has a lot of things to say about humanity and relationships that translate totally into advertising and messaging. So I
Yes.
can't take full credit. I just know it when I guess I know it when I see it, and then I pull it together so that we can share it with others.
And those are all the spices that you've taken off the shelf and put in to make your sauce.
Absolutely. Secret sauce.
Secret
Absolutely.
sauce.
Secret sauce.
Um, so is there anything that you'd like to leave us with? I think, well, we've covered pretty much the whole gamut here. This has been really, really, really fantastic. But any last thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's trust who you are, and that's different than trusting your gut. Trusting who you are is it's about being willing to really be yourself, which just is difficult to do in general because we're not sure that if you knew me the way that I know me, you probably wouldn't like me, right? We have this fear of being exposed. There's this imposter syndrome thing that some people experience, right? It's basically being vulnerable, right? Bad advertising is when you're not willing to be vulnerable. When you're willing to be vulnerable, you can make some really great advertising. So I would say, and this is bigger than advertising, trust who you are. You are who you are for a reason. Embrace that. I'm talking about even the quote downsides, because when you admit the downside, you immediately give credibility to the upside. That's a Roy H. Williams thing. All right. So I'd say have the courage to be yourself, and then be diligent in expressing that, and hold yourself accountable to that. Don't pull the punch. Be a bold version of yourself. And that doesn't mean you have to be salacious or obnoxious or like in your face. Be a really bold version of whoever you actually are. You will be much better off. You will feel freer. You will be happier, and you will have more customers that love you and you love working with, because there's an actual honest connection.
That is great. Thank you. How do we people find you? What's your URL?
Obviously ofthec.com, but you can check us out on Instagram, Of the Sea Buffalo. We're on Facebook as Of the Sea as well. LinkedIn, the typical places. The technology's there. You search Of the Sea and you should find us.
Thank you.
And for those whiskey curious people, Whiskey Folks is what you're looking for, at Whiskey Folks on Instagram and whiskeyfolks.com.
Yes. If you are interested in learning more about SLC Advisory Group, you can find us at slcadvisorygroup.com. And why don't we say goodbye, and why don't we go get a whiskey?
Yeah. All right. I'll be over in a second.
All right. Bye, Erik. Thank
you,
you,
Sean.